Yeah, I started coming to the CVUU in 1976 or so when I was about 5 years old. Yes, that means I'm 51 right now, which is hard for me to believe and probably even harder for those who've known me since then to believe. Raise your hand if it, and I have to admit, today's sermon, you're just going to have to go with me because I was anticipating that we might have more people in the room. So just imagine like all the people in the room behind you. I am very appreciative that most of the people sat up front, except the people who just got here. Raise your hand if you've known me since I was 5. Oh, see, and we do have Bob Robinson waving at me in the back. So yeah, I've got my mom and Bob Robinson here. I don't know on Zoom if I can see people's hands raising there, but hello to the Zoom folks as well. So the main things I remember about coming to the UU as a kid and a teen were, and yeah, it's like, where's Kate? She should be hearing this, but I think she had to step out. So the main things I remember were learning about UUism and the UU principles, studying Greek and Roman mythology, studying other religions, taking the About Your Sexuality curriculum, because that's a thing we do here. It's called About Our Whole Lives now. Having some really fun Halloween parties and youth sleepovers, which I suspect my mom had something to do with, and watching Gary Kroeger, a sometime CVUU member, religiously on Saturday Night Live, so I could talk about it with my UU friends on Sunday mornings. How many of you used to watch Gary Kroeger on Saturday Night Live? Yeah, and maybe you didn't even know at the time that he was coming to this church off and on. So I also remember growing up in a house filled with goddess statues and other pagan images and thinking how weird my mom was for having these things around the house. Yeah, that's right. When I went to college, I took a class in world religion and thought it was great that I could get college credit for something I've been learning about my whole life. In college, I considered myself an agnostic and a UU, even though I only went to church rarely. After college, I lived in Phoenix for a while and in Chicago for a while. In both cities, I explored the UU churches in the area, but still only attended rarely. I really had fun visiting all of the UU churches in both areas. It was such a novelty to have more than one to choose from. I think there were 2 UU churches in Phoenix and 5 or 6 in Chicago. I moved back to the Waterloo Cedar Falls area in my late 20s and returned to the CVUU in my early 30s. That's when I really started getting involved as an adult. I tried lots of different things at the CVUU in my 30s. I think my first official UU gig was going to finance council meetings, which seemed like it would be a good fit since I worked in banking at the time. But I decided fairly quickly that it wasn't for me because it was too similar to how I spent my time at my paid job. And anyone who's ever been involved in finance council, raise your hand. I'm curious here. I know. Oh, Bob's waving his hand in the back. And shout out to Jenna on Zoom. I know she's on Zoom. I don't know who else is out there. But shout out to Jenna and the current finance council for sure. I also got involved in the Social Action Council and somehow ended up as chair for a few years. Who's been involved in social action? And maybe I'll just to expand this, who did anything with the Walking Our Talk where you filled in, hopefully most people, but yeah. So one of my most memorable UU experiences during my 30s was probably chaperoning a couple of youth trips in Minneapolis and Kansas City. So those were some good times. Another memorable and life-changing experience in my 30s was when I started to go bike riding with Team Flamingo, and yay, and discovered how much fun it can be to mix business with pleasure. For those of you who aren't familiar with Team Flamingo, I am getting some confused looks. Yes. So Team Flamingo is a RAGBRAI bike riding team that is primarily UUs. And so you can have hours of conversation while you're riding your bike. And even if just a tiny bit of it is church business, you can get a lot done. So doing the work of the CVUU and who here is on Team Flamingo? I know for sure Carolyn's over there. So yeah, Michaela, yeah. So once a flamingo, always a flamingo, right? We have ministers from other denominations on our team. Yes, we are, we don't discriminate. So doing the work of the CVUU with my feathered friends and hanging out together to socialize was always a good time, and it made the work easier and more fun too. During my 30s, I also became very focused on my own spiritual growth. I discovered paganism and started going to spirituality retreats. My two favorite retreat buddies were my mom and Sherry Huber-Otting, our current board president. Suddenly, the weird goddess images around my mom's house were not only weird, but also cool. I started going to Buddhist Path meetings regularly, and I really enjoyed the shared readings, meditations, and discussions. I'm excited to hear Buddhist Path is back on again now. And although my exploration of Buddhism has been very meaningful for me over the last 15 years and continues to this day, by far the best outcome of attending Buddhist Path was that was where I met my current and future life partner, Tom, over 11 years ago. And for those folks on Zoom, Tom is here today. So I also enjoyed participating in the Nature Lovers group, where Tom and I also connected, and other small groups. I hosted and co-hosted Wednesday night dinners for several years, and I really enjoyed the camaraderie of working with Karen Impola and Carolyn Hildebrandt to plan for fun and festive dinners that weren't too hard to prepare, especially with all of us sharing the work and the play. In my 40s and now into my 50s, I continue exploring my spirituality with a focus on Buddhism and paganism. I also continue doing the work of the CVUU, and often more than one job at a time, which you'll notice as you look around at the folks doing work in this place, is that we often wear multiple hats. A turning point for me in my spiritual journey came with the arrival of the Blue Zones Project in Iowa in 2012 or so. For those who aren't familiar with Blue Zones, it's based on a National Geographic study about behaviors and attitudes of people around the world who live to be the healthiest, the longest. One of the behaviors that was determined to help people live longer and be happier is to live a life of purpose. So the Blue Zones Project developed a purpose curriculum, which we use to form several purpose small groups here at the CVUU. The purpose curriculum is based on the ideas of exploring our own individual gifts, passions, and values, and using them to write a personal purpose statement. And so as part of my group, I developed my own purpose statement, which is, my purpose is to live a life of balance and spiritual growth and to help others do the same. And is there anyone here who has been in a purpose group before? Yeah, I see four different people. So yeah. So this purpose statement has helped me make decisions about what to say yes to and what to say no to in my work and my personal life and here at the CVUU. After completing the purpose curriculum, I spent several years struggling with attempting to find purpose at work, or wondering if I should have a different job that felt more purposeful. For the last 14 years, I've worked as the training manager for a national nonprofit resource center that helps prevent Medicare fraud. While I love hosting webinars for a living, and I've been doing it since before the pandemic, I find information about Medicare and Medicare fraud to be incredibly boring and not in line with my personal passions. After much soul searching and job searching, I finally decided that my day job is good enough as is, especially since it now allows me to work from home, and I've even been able to reduce my hours. So that allows me to focus more of my time on where I really find my passion, which is right here, or my center, right here at the CVUU. Because this is a place that I think it's fun to be here. I have lots of personal history here and really great people like all of you that are here today and on Zoom. And also, I believe the CVUU is an important beacon of liberal thinking in the Cedar Valley, and that it's worth putting a significant amount of my time into keeping it running and making it a welcoming and fun place for visitors and members alike. I have held many different positions at the CVUU over the last 10 to 15 years, And I love that there are so many different ways to help out around here. I find it very meaningful to regularly reevaluate where I most want to be involved, because our gifts, passions, and values may change over time. And it's important to check in and see if I'm still feeling centered by my current choices. And so I often think of a line from the Indigo Girls song, Watershed. Every 5 years or so, I look back on my life and I have a good laugh. And so, yeah, it's also a good reminder to not take myself so seriously, because I really tend to do that. So, every 5 years or so, or maybe more like every year or two, I ask myself, what sounds like fun at the CVUU? And what might feel the most meaningful? Where can I make the biggest impact at the CVUU and have an interesting or even fun time doing it? And I've listed off here several different jobs that I've had, but I see we don't really have a ton of time. So maybe I'll just run through a few of them, because I don't know that I can say I've done it all, but I've come pretty close since I've been coming here for 20 years now as an adult. So I've done lots of things. One thing, I'll just do a check-in because I'm curious. Okay, so throughout all my jobs, one thing I often do is write newsletter articles. How many of you have ever written a newsletter article? Let's see, I'm hoping I'm going to see a lot of hands go up on this one, and hopefully out on Zoom too. So I will just put in a plug for our newsletter. If you want to know what's going on here, of course, read the newsletter, but also if you want to honor and feel connected with the work that goes into those newsletters, there are a lot of people who put a lot of work into that happening every month, especially Jerry Chamberlain, who is our editor. But a lot of people write articles and they spend a lot of time thinking about what they're going to say. So it's a great way to find out what's going on and connect with people here doing that great work of the CVUU. So, in my time, in my career here, I have been a small group leader and organizer. I've coordinated adult forum and presented many adult forums. I was the webmaster for a while, congregational life council, membership and marketing. I was in charge of that before Juanita took it over. I was president for 3 years in my late 40s. I've said I'll probably do it again in my 50s, but not yet. And probably again in my 60s too. Shared Ministry Council. This is a fairly new council that formed shortly before the pandemic. So I have the distinction of being the only chair we've ever had of that council. Again, for anyone who's not familiar, the concept of shared ministry is that the congregation, the minister, and the professional staff, all of us commit to work together and support and promote the growth and well-being of our congregation in all aspects of community life. So really what that means is that each of us has both the honor and the responsibility to play our part in keeping the CVUU running in whatever way feels right to each of us. And I have gotten so much meaning out of working and playing here with other CVUUs that I really encourage each of you to think about, where is your passion? How can you help out around here in a way that feels good to you? And if you're curious to explore what your options might be, I love talking about that kind of thing. So feel free to come and talk to me. I'm on the nominating committee with Michaela and my mom. We're actually looking for a new nominating committee. Helps make sure we know who's going to be on the board in the next year. So if anybody's interested in that, let us know. Sermons. I started doing sermons. January 2016 was my first one about the song I Hope You Dance. It was all about living a life of adventure. And then I did my second sermon 5 years later, January 2021, about living a life of adventure during the pandemic. So it was kind of a follow-up to that first one. As Mandy mentioned, last year I did one about finding gratitude during the pandemic, and now here I am today talking about finding our center. So how many of you have ever given a sermon before? Oh, I'm seeing lots of hands go up. That's great. That is great. And hopefully on Zoom too. And how many of you have ever helped with a Sunday service in any way? Yeah, Jess is like me, yeah, Mandy, yeah, lots. I think almost every hand went up. So anybody who didn't raise your hand, you might want to think about like, how can you, is that something you want to try? It can be as simple as doing a reading or something like that. Yeah. Oh, and on and off over the years, I have pondered the growing up UU kind of makes sense. I've pondered the possibility of becoming a UU minister, but I decided a long time ago that I would not like the hours and that level of commitment. Oh my gosh. I'm down to 30 hours a week now, hourly. I love it. I go in, do my time, I leave. Ministers have to work most weekends and into the evenings, and they have a 6-day work week. Thank goodness we have people like Pastor Emma who are willing to put up with a minister's schedule. I am personally so glad that she's able to take some well-deserved vacation time this month. So just think about that whenever you're thinking, why is she gone so long? Well, she puts in her time. Now, my most recent adventure here at the CVUU, other than today's sermon, is to take the lead with Michaela Rich on our stewardship campaign this year. Michaela and I talked Mandy Booty and Karen Impola and Stephanie Stagey as our advisor into helping us, as long as our goal would be, in addition to, of course, collecting pledges from all of the CVUU members later this year, our other goal is to have fun. And so I have already so enjoyed working with Michaela, Mandy, Karen, and Stephanie, and I really look forward to hanging out with all of you here. Maybe not the folks on Zoom. I tend not to do Zoom in my free time when I can help it, since I'm online, but Michaela will be there hanging out with you. So anyway, we all look forward to hanging out with all of you. At those socials in January and February. So please do sign up online or at the clipboard. And then also stay tuned for more about the fun that we plan to have with all of you this year on the stewardship campaign, including the bare bones of the tree that I was going to explain now, but Debbie did it for me. So there's a tree here and it is not finished yet. It will be growing throughout the campaign. So stay tuned on that. And we just hope to have lots of fun with that this year. And again, our theme for the meals is growing our future. And that's based on our church theme, which is new growth from deep roots. So to wrap up, here's where, imagine a large audience full of people. Who has ever worked with me on any council, committee, the board, or any other type of work here at the CVUU? Please stand up or raise your hand. Yeah, stand up. If you've ever worked with me on anything here, yeah. Tom's like, yeah, I got to stand up. Yeah, so we have quite a few people standing. And so I would just invite, and on Zoom folks, I can't see if you're standing or not. I will imagine, let's say half the folks on Zoom are probably standing too. So, so for any of you who didn't stand up just now, I want to invite you all to join us. Like, come join, or maybe I'm just not working on the right things and I haven't connected with you yet, but come join us doing the things here at the CVUU. And for any of those who did stand up, I encourage you to think about, is what you're doing right now here at the CVUU, is that feeding you? Is it centering you? Or is it time to try something different, something else, or something more? Remember, you can do more than one thing at once. We sometimes need that. So, hopefully you can all see through, throughout this service, you could see the sense of beloved community. And this is really why I feel like I've found my center here. All of you are my beloved community. I'm so grateful to have all of you here at the CVUU, and also a lot of the people that aren't here today. But really, whoever shows up, it's always great to be here. And we all have the blessing to work and play together here to keep the place running. So I'll close my sermon with the words from our offering song, which I believe also apply well to our concept of shared ministry at the CVUU. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.